In this video, I will teach you how to PvP on 1.16 plus like Technoblade. It is insane how different his fighting style is to someone like Dream, so make sure to watch till the end to find out how. Also, if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe and like the video before you start. It makes my day, and when I see that even a single new person has subscribed, it really encourages me to continue to improve my content for the future. So let's get on to the video. Let's start with the basics of PvPing on 1.16 like Technoblade. Do not focus on the axe crit. It is good for some things, but resist the temptation to be constantly jumping around like a maniac. Technoblade has said that 1.9 favors the defender, so don't go ballistic on your opponent right at the start. I know you want to. Don't. If you remember my Dream video, shameless plug, I said he was really good at aim. Well, Technoblade sucks at aim. I'm just kidding. Technoblade is just not as good at aim as him. That's probably because it's not his native PvP style. Here's an example of how you can have good aim but still outplay someone with better aim than you. Don't be phased when an attack doesn't land, get your timing good, and hit at every possible chance, so that as long as you eventually hit, it won't matter so much that you missed a couple thousand other times. Technoblade's timing is also not as great as Dream's. This is probably just because he's not as used to it. Personally, I recommend working on timing on different weapons, but to console you poor souls, just know that a non-fully charged hit will more often than not do at least a little damage. My heart goes out to all my little spam clickers who think they're still on 1.8. Technoblade is fairly good with the reach in 1.9, as often he will land hits from a great distance, nearing maximum hit range, which gives him a big advantage against people who don't use their full reach, because he can give free hits when they're at a distance that the opponent thinks they're safe at. Unlike most players who underestimate reach, he tends to overestimate it, which I think is a pretty great issue to have. This also includes knowing an enemy's reach though, and helps him dodge attack from quite a long, close range distance. Though Techno strafes a lot, and we'll talk more about that later, in 1.9 he also does a lot of hitting and critting, backing up and then going back, and you might remember that from my Dream video. Technoblade has said that swords in 1.16 are purely ornamental, but I personally think that he prefers sword PvP to axe and shield PvP, and he's a lot better at it. In sword PvP he's more inclined to act similar to 1.8, so it's a lot more natural for him. He tends to land a lot more regular hits as opposed to being focused on crits. Technoblade also likes to strafe and crit hit on the sides of the player as opposed to straight in front, and also prefers to move while he hits the other player as opposed to hitting while standing still. This may also make it harder for the opponent to find, focus, and hit him since his position is constantly changing. Technoblade knows his manners, kids. He only eats when the opponent is eating too. If the other person doesn't initiate the eating, he doesn't often eat in battle. Let's move on to strategy and other techniques. Techno keeps a level head in battle even in moments of stress, which is a key to victory. He isn't using muscle memory or reflex as much as he is constantly gauging what he should do. Let's start with defensive techniques. Technoblade, as I've said earlier, plays very defensively, or you could say regally in a way. He'll wait for the other player to come to him, a similar tactic to 1.8 duels. He can afford to do this because he's actually really good at dodging attacks. If you look at these clips from his practices with Nihachu, he dodges arrows fairly easily and even up close. He is a master at strafing to mess up the opponent's aim. Strafing is especially useful in 1.9 because if a player misses their hit, then they can't really do much until their weapon recharges, giving Techno a small time frame to gain the advantage. Technoblade does not actually rely super heavily on the shield either, unlike a lot of other players, and especially new players. I can only attribute this to something similar to 1.8. I would like to say maybe he's just a little weaker on the 1.9 mechanics, but I think this actually works out in his favor, because axe crits are the biggest thing on 1.9 according to him, so instead of using the shield to block everything, he reserves it for only blocking crits. Techno applies ancient Chinese techniques to avoid assassination, like hiding behind pillars to heal. He also takes any opportunity he can to reload his crossbow. He generally prefers to do it as soon as it's shot, but if he can't, he'll go hide in order to do it. He also says if you're getting comboed, the only thing you can do is run away.
If that's happening to you, you pretty much just run away and break out of the combo like that. You don't want to keep walking into them.
Okay guys, I know you've all been waiting for the offensive techniques. Let's get into it. Let's start with the classic Triangular method. Good old Pythagoras. Hit the opponent on the ledge, then aim for their feet, which is much easier to hit than the head. A variation of this is to stay on the ground, and when the opponent leaps for a crit, hit their feet. Technoblade also applies the absolute tank strategy. This consists in, when you know you have a health advantage, you rush the opponent and trade hits with them. As long as you keep up with the strikes of the opponent, it's likely they'll run out of health before you do. So you gotta trust your gut. The way Technoblade gauges health is also a little different to Dream in that it doesn't really seem like a lot is going on mentally. I mean, he's not doing university level math in his head to determine the number of hearts his opponent has. Instead, he relies on what he sees in battle. If the player says, "Oh no," "uh-oh," or runs away frantically, he'll assume it. Another way he is very visual in this process is by noticing that he is landing a lot more hits to the opponent than time that he himself is being hit. Based on this, he'll decide whether to defend or pursue. In order to rush the opponent that's running away, Techno will corner them on the map so they have no choice but to engage in combat. Sound familiar? Technoblade says he vaguely also knows how to do a special 1.9 combo, where you hit the player while they're being knocked back in the air so that they don't even have a chance to hit you in return. This is easier with a sword because of a low recharge period, and it's an example of how swords are more useful than axes in certain scenarios. But in general, Techno doesn't use many combos or special attacks. Technoblade implements a technique I haven't seen many people actually use, even though it actually makes a lot of sense and is really useful in my opinion, and I'd love to make an entire video on it if that's something you guys would want to see. It consists of using your offhand for more than just a shield. In MCU, that ancient thing, he used his offhand for a bow and his main for a sword, allowing for close and long range attacks without needing to hotbar. In other instances, he puts his food in his other hand, so that he can eat without having to focus on switching to another spot in his hotbar, and also without disarming his weapon. He will also strike when he knows the opponent is distracted. For example, if they're eating or reloading their crossbow or simply trying to hide and heal. It's all about being perceptive. One of Technoblade's strongest qualities is that he is inconsistent in his movement and in his strategies. It is hard to predict whether he will go for a crossbow shot, a close range attack, a dodge or a block, or is hiding to heal or to lure the opponent to him. He doesn't stick to one thing and often changes from long range attacks to short range in an instant. Okay, final note time. The best part about learning how to PvP like Technoblade is that it really is for fun. Even though most people consider him to be one of the best PvPers out there, he doesn't take himself too seriously and has fun in every battle, not being overly affected if he happens to lose. And I think that's another key to how he's so good. Being stressed out in battle and caring only about victory is bound to tire a person out. If you lose, then you should be completely okay with that, if you're trying to PvP like Technoblade. It's all a learning experience, and at the end of the day, you're PvPing for fun. Keep that in mind, and you'll improve without realizing it. I personally love 1.16 plus PvP. I feel like there is a big community for 1.8 players, but not so much for 1.16 players. Even now, I think most people watching this probably only know of PvP Legacy as a go-to PvP server for 1.9 plus. But because there's such a small community, I also feel like there's a lot of room for growth, and I really want to explore those. So I'm hoping to do that in the future. It's also important to keep in mind I'm not a master at 1.16 PvP. I'm also still learning, which is why I really enjoy doing these analysis videos, is because I can learn while making content, and hopefully you guys can learn with me.